It's great.
In this crisis, I've been taking the perspective of mass psychology. Yes, indeed. In the beginning of the crisis, I have been studying the statistics and the numbers, and actually, I noticed that they were often blatantly wrong, and at the same time, people continue to believe in it and to go along with the mainstream narrative, and that was why I started to study it rather from the perspective of mass psychology, because I knew that mass formation has huge impact on individuals' intelligence and cognitive functioning, and I had the feeling that this was the only thing that could explain why highly intelligent people started to believe in a narrative and in numbers that were in many respects utterly absurd.
So this guy had my attention. You know, as a statistician, he was looking at the same numbers we were. We saw the switcheroos, we saw the models, and we said, no, we don't have to be statisticians. Don't need a master to see that they're fooling around with the numbers. And then he switched to his true expertise, which is mass or psychology. And so he uses a term called mass formation. And that you will hear that again in another clip. Mass formation is mass hysteria or mass hypnosis can also be a term. But to get into this state of mass hysteria, you need 4 elements.
4 things need to exist or need to be in place if you want large-scale mass phenomena to emerge. And the first thing is that there need to be a lot of socially isolated people who experience a lack of social bond. The second one is that there need to be a lot of people who experience a lack of sense-making in life. And the third and the fourth condition is that there need to be a lot of free-floating anxiety and a lot of free-floating psychological discontent. Mm-hmm. If you have these 4 things, lack of social bond, lack of sense-making, free-floating anxiety, and free-floating psychological discontent, then society is highly at risk for the emergence of mass phenomena. And these 4 conditions existed shortly before the corona crisis. There was like an epidemic of burnout. Over 40 to 70% of the people experienced their jobs as completely senseless. This is described in the book Bullshit Jobs. And if you look at the use of psychopharmaceuticals, it was huge. And then this shows how much discontent there was in our society.
So we had an interesting timing of events here with the society that was disconnected, depressed about their future, bullcrap jobs. Yes.
A couple of things that also, I just to point out, come to mind immediately. By quarantining the healthy instead of the sick,
yes,
which would just exacerbate item number 1, because now you're separating everybody and making it, and you can't, and the edicts, including one I think I put in a newsletter, a picture of it. No talking.
Yes, yeah, exactly. Don't talk to your neighbor.
Wear a mask and no talking.
So he talks about these free-floating anxieties. Here's what that means.
Free-floating anxiety is the most painful psychological phenomena someone can experience. And so it's extremely unpainful. It leads up to panic attacks, to all kinds of extremely painful psychological experiences. So what people want in this situation is something to connect their anxiety to. They are looking for an explanation for their anxiety. And now, if this free-floating anxiety is highly present in a population and the media provide a narrative which indicates an object of anxiety and at the same time describe a strategy to deal with this object of anxiety, then all the anxiety connects to this object and people are willing to follow the strategy to deal with this object no matter what the cost is. That is what happens in the beginning of mass formation. Then, in a second step, people start a collective and heroic battle with this object of anxiety. And in that way, a new kind of social bond emerges and a new kind of sense making. Suddenly, life is all directed at battling the object of anxiety and in this way establishing a new connection with other people.
Hello, Twitter.
Hello, the New York Times.
Yes.
Let's take it to the highest end. The NBC, CBS, NPR.
All of them. And this turns out that this is very, very dangerous when this takes place. So we have this complete lack of understanding of what is going on. Why is it happening? I'm isolated, quote unquote, from other people or even from your family. I don't know what's going on. Then all of a sudden, it's the COVID. We all have to attack the COVID. And we do that with wearing masks and we do it with vaccines. And the crowd now goes from complete isolation to a complete sense of community and belonging and collectiveness.
And that the sudden switch of a negative state, a radical lack of social connection, to the opposite, to the massive social connection that is experienced in a crowd, this sudden switch leads up to a sort of mental intoxication. And that's what makes mass formation or crowd formation the exact equivalent of hypnosis. So all people who have been studying mass formations, such as Gustave Le Bon, for instance, McDougall, Canetti, have remarked that mass formation is not similar to hypnosis, that mass formation is exactly equal to hypnosis. Mass formation is a sort of hypnosis.
Okay. So,
now,
go ahead.
Well, a couple of things come to mind. One, by the way, this is a clip of the day when you're done, it's funny that Scott Adams, who got the vaccine.
Yes. Is the master hypnotist.
He's the master at spotting this sort of thing. He did note my mass hysteria column, even though he said he didn't quite buy it. Mm-hmm. Although it was kind of written with guys like him in mind, but he noted it, but he didn't.
I didn't clip this particular bit. It's all in the show notes. People can go check it out. He said that it took him 6 months, this professor. He said, I didn't understand what was happening. And after 6 months, I slowed, because someone said, could this be your colleagues who have been paid to do this and create this? He says, no, I don't think most of them are aware. He said, I wasn't even aware that it was actually taking place. And once you're in that state, which according to the,
it happens to anybody.
It
happens to everybody overboard on our show.
For sure. No, they're goners for sure. But when you get into the state of mass formation or mass hypnosis, a lot of crazy stuff can be done to you.
So what happens is that at that moment, when people experience this mental intoxication, it doesn't matter anymore whether the narrative is correct or wrong, even blatantly wrong. What matters is that it leads up to this mental intoxication. And that's why they continue to go along with the narrative, even if they could know by thinking for 1 second that it is wrong. Because for people, it doesn't matter when the narrative is wrong. And what we all try to do is we all try to show constantly that the narrative is wrong. But for people, that's not what it is all about. It's all about the fact that they don't want to go back to this painful state of free-floating anxiety.
I'm so on board with this. I completely believe that's what's taking place.
It makes nothing but sense. But let me add another little element, which I forgot in the last segment. When he talks about the new community that forms, under this mass hypnosis state, and it's like, we're relieved a little bit of this. That's the community. That's where the stay safe.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Which is Heil Hitler. Heil Hitler was the Germans were in a community, all, Heil Hitler, Heil Hitler. And the other one, which is, are you vaccinated?
Yes. Did you join the party?
Which, are you vaccinated the same as if you had the training in
Yes.
was a cult?
Yeah.
Have you had the training? Have you had the training? Oh, yes, I have. Oh, okay. You're a member of our group. Have you been vaccinated? Oh, good. You're a member of our group. We can be happy together. It's very sick at this point. Sick.
It is so sick that this state that people are in can make them completely, since all they want to do is not go back to the pain of the isolation and the misunderstanding and the unknown, that you can actually inflict pain on them and they won't even know it.
As a consequence of mass formation, people do not get egoistic at all. Rather, to the contrary, mass formation focuses the attention so much on one point that you can take everything away of people, their psychological and physical well-being, their material well-being. You can take it away and they will even not notice it. And that's one of the major consequences of mass formation. And it's exactly the same as hypnosis, as classical hypnosis. When during hypnosis, someone's attention is focused on one point, you can cut in his flesh. The person will not notice it. And that is what happens all the time when hypnosis is used as a kind of anesthesia during surgical operations. A rather simple hypnotic procedure is sufficient to make people completely insensitive to pain.
And I think that we're beyond that state. We're in the next phase. And this is where he got my attention as he equates this mass hypnosis, this mass formation, with totalitarianism, which is not what you might think it is.
Another consequence that is very typical for totalitarian states is that people become radically intolerant for dissonant voices. And so, because if someone tells another story, or if someone claims that the official story is wrong, then this person threatens to wake the people up, and they will get angry because they are confronted with the initial anxiety and the initial psychological discontent. And so they direct all their aggression at these dissonant voices, at the other voices. And at the same time, they are radically tolerant for their leaders, for the people who pronounce the mainstream narrative. These people can actually cheat and lie and manipulate and do everything they want. They will always be forgiven by the crowd because the crowd seems to think that they do it for their own sake, and that's also part of the mechanism of mass formation.
So, of course, they get completely radicalized. They hate you. They